Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Data Research and Accountability Office Hours. And today's topic, we'll be looking at analyzing and applying student learning data from the secondary level. So with us today, I'm Melissa Smith from Data and Accountability, and we have Anne Sylvie, Kevin, Sonia, and Spencer. Can you guys say hello?
Hi.
Hello.
So because we're such a small group today, instead of you typing in your name, school, can you just unmute yourselves and tell us who's with us today? Cindy, you want to start?
Hi, I'm Cindy DeFore. I'm the Senior Director of Grants, and I'm located at Crossroads 1. And something I wanted to just get more familiar with the dashboards. I've used some of them sometimes, but it's been a while, and I know there's been a lot of changes, so I just wanted to get familiar.
Thank you.
And I'm Bonnie Mwanda, Assistant Principal of Instruction at Heritage High School. I got plenty of time to learn some stuff now. I went to a couple of the sessions, I think at like the AP trainings, those like the year opening deals before, but then the school year has started and then I can't really think about it. So now that I have some time, I'm looking forward to like learning about the dashboards a little bit more and what I can use to support student learning at my school.
Thank you, ladies.
And I will add, Bonnie is a very good user of our data, as is Cindy. So Bonnie uses our data a lot.
Oh, yay.
So we had an icebreaker, and so if you can go to this bit.ly, bit.ly/data feelings, capital D, you'll see some images, and I want you to pick which one kind of resonates about how you feel about data.
You want to put that on your screen, Melissa?
Yes, I will. So we have 4 pictures, so feel free to type in, or like I said, we're a small group, you can share out.
For me, I always like the dog with his hands over his eyes, particularly because most of our data didn't happen this year. So I'm like, oh no.
I picked the lady jumping up in the sky. I like to know things and like why. Sometimes though it's to my detriment because like right now it's like my brain is about to explode like with too much knowledge, but I just like to know things and why it is and how I can impact what's going on in my building.
Thank you.
And I would be a combination between I love data, I love looking at it, I love playing with it, but I also get the fourth picture of being under and not quite sure. Sometimes I'm concerned that I may be projecting on the data things that I want. Am I really looking at what the data says, or am I looking at what I think the data says? And so that's why I always try to cross-reference with you all in person just to make sure I'm on the right track.
Thank you for that, Cindy. I think a lot of us do that. You want the data to tell you what you want to know.
Yeah, that's where my head goes to that fourth picture, just thinking like our responsibility as a department is to make sure that people don't feel that way. So how can we kind of organize and communicate and visualize the data so that they are feeling like the person on the left? I think those data dashboards help us to do so, I hope.
See, and I think of the third picture and I think of you, Spencer. I don't know why, but
I was going to ask if that was correct with that name, if I should feel offended. Because I did.
All right. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, Kevin reminds me, that third picture reminds me of Kevin.
Yeah, that's fine.
He's like holding his finger up saying, oh, wait.
So for those of you on the call, you can feel free to follow along with us, or like I said, this is recorded, so you can always come back and check. But the two dashboards that we reference in the description of today's presentation can be found in your Wake ID portal. The first one we're going to talk about today is the Wake Data Dashboard. And then the other one that we wanted to talk about today is the SOAR reports, which can be found in Oasis. A disclaimer is that today being July 1, the Oasis dashboard just happens to be down because of end of year rollout. So we won't be able to show you that today, but we're hoping to have another session in August. And if you look at the previous session in that we did, the one before this one, elementary focus, you'll see how to get to that one. So I am going to now, we'll start off with the Wake Data Dashboard, and I'm going to turn things over to Kevin, who's our first presenter, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
We had a question.
Yes.
Do I now have access to all the rosters I would find in Quicker in Oasis? Mostly, yes. That is the purpose of Oasis now.
So,
Okay.
Bonnie, I'm sorry, Kevin, before you
Okay.
start, just to go back to Bonnie's question. So Bonnie, that means like your rising ninth grade roster is also in Oasis, and as Sylvie said, your current roster and your previous year's roster is in Oasis as well. But there are some things that we put in, we are still placing in Quicker, like your ACT credentialing roster is still in Quicker. So we haven't moved that over to Oasis just yet.
Okay, and then like I emailed Brian Sumner for like our fall EOC scores and stuff like that, but I was at home, right? So that stuff is still over in Quicker too, those reports and stuff like that.
Yes, those are still in Quicker, but keep your ears or your eyes, because you're going to get an email fairly soon for they being SIS, our Student Information Services, have developed a new tool that's going to replace Quicker, and it's called Files In, Files Out. We're trying to get them to change that name, but so I think they call it FIFO, maybe is the abbreviation.
Okay.
But anyway, that's where we're going to move all of those documents, like the things that are PDF files, all of the other stuff will be in that location. And I think that's also going to be in Oasis, but you'll receive more information about that in the coming weeks.
Okay, just trying to keep up. All right, thanks.
Thank you. We'll probably have an office hour on Files In, Files Out too.
Okay, so let's start off with the PreACT. This is a test that's sponsored by the state, so every sophomore in the state gets to take this. What you'll see here is that we've clearly labeled it as 10th grade, and it has the composite score and then the 4 subtests that make up the composite for each student. Over on the left, you'll see each of our high schools listed. And within the high school, you'll see the categories all and then the race categories, including multi. These bars represent each of these categories and the average scale score for that subgroup. On the right side, you'll see some filters. And today we can, I'd like to just choose a couple of schools. Let's pick Apex and then Heritage. So you can see we can easily filter, and you'll see our filter icon pop up here, and you'll know something is filtered when you see that X there, because it's keeping out some of the information. School year is already filtered to 2019. For this particular test, we have 4 years of data. So I've checked 2019 for us. But if we check another year of data, what will happen is that those scale score averages will change because it's both years combined. So I'm just going to keep it with 1 year. And then we have any of our race categories that we can filter on here. So if we just want to see Hispanic, and multi. We can check those two. And you'll see the all bar will stay, and then we'll just be left with Hispanic and multi. Again, if I want to undo that filter, I can just click here. It'll automatically undo it for me. If I want to see the order from highest to lowest for my school, I can go up here. You'll see a little icon pop up that indicates sort of a decreasing or descending sort order. If I click on that, what you're going to see is that my highest subgroup average is going to pop to the top here, right below the all. All will not sort. It'll always stay first. And then in descending order, you'll see that for both schools here. And there's one down here we can also click on. If I click this, it'll just do the opposite for me. So the lowest average subgroup will pop to the top right under the all bar. And then if I click it again, it'll go back to its original order. So that's for the composite scores here. So we can compare our subgroups to our overall school, and then our school to another school if we wish. There's not a Wake County comparison on this particular dashboard, but we do get to see the components that make up the composite score. So we have English, math, reading, and science. So if I just click here, or I can roll through it by clicking the arrow. And what you'll see is that everything expanded once I changed from composite to English. So it doesn't, your filtering, for example, we filtered on school, didn't stay, it didn't persist. So we have to go back and do that again on English. Let's go ahead and do that. Take out all, just choose a couple schools. So here what you'll see, there really are a couple of quick differences. You can see there's a text box that SIS has inserted for us to let us know what this dotted line means. The dotted line for the pre-ACT is a benchmark, and this one stands at 15. You'll see the 15 showing up here, but you can see that it's in between the 14 and 16 marker on this axis. And so typically, you'll have a marker at different points for these different subjects. So for pre-ACT, if you hit 15 on the English subtest, then that puts you on target. That's the minimum score that'll put you on target to meet your ACT college readiness benchmark the next year when you're a junior and you take the ACT. So that gives you, anybody scoring under that has, less than what amounts to a 50-50 chance of hitting the benchmark their junior year. So here you can see, for example, at Heritage, we have a couple of subgroups who are under that 15 benchmark, and then other subgroups ahead of it, beyond it. And then the all average is 17.2 for their sophomores. If we go to math, we'll see that line shifts. So now it's at 19. So English was 15, math is 19. Reading looks like it's 20, and then science is 21. So you can see science, I could just scroll through this, and you won't see too many subgroups for too many schools actually averaging more than that science benchmark. It's the one that, even nationally, is the toughest one to be able to meet. Remember, this is pre-ACT in 10th grade. Are there any questions about the pre-ACT dashboard?
There's no filter for gender?
No, currently there is no filter for gender. And if there were, we would end up having, school, ethnicity, gender, like this. So in this particular dashboard, that's not been put in. But that's something that we can write down and consider having put in. So here, when we go back to composite, you can see the line disappears because there's no benchmark for the overall composite score, which for each student just basically is an average of these 4. You can't take your school though and average these 4 averages and get your composite average, because you'd have to multiply by the number of students in that subgroup and do that for each one of them in order to get this one. Are there any other questions before we move on to ACT?
And Bonnie, I will tell you that we believe that the pre-ACT and the ACT is going to be offered next year. So DPI hasn't confirmed that, but we know that ACT has set test dates for just the students in general. So the fact that they are willing to offer the assessment lets us know that as a state, we're probably going to be doing the pre-ACT and the ACT.
That's a good point. The pre-ACT is given in the fall, and the ACT is springtime. And as we switch over, if there are no other questions, we'll switch over to ACT. Go back up here to our breadcrumbs, to the dashboards. Click the ACT chart. So you see this is very much like what we just saw for pre-ACT. So one of the things that I should just follow up on is that our ACT administration for our juniors this year got interrupted. We had a set of juniors who did take the ACT. That, because it's a spring administration, every year we get those scores back sometime in the summer, and then they can populate into the dashboard and be used by anyone who needs them. You'll see, for example, over here for school year, you don't see 1920 because we don't have those scores in yet. The set of juniors who didn't get to take the ACT, is my understanding that they'll get to take an October administration, and it's yet to be determined how we'll display that, if we will, in this kind of what has been an 11th grade only display. So this has the same kind of rules in terms of our subsetting. So let's just quickly subset. And as we move through, we'll see our line pop up. But I want you to make sure you get to see here is that the benchmark line for pre-ACT has a different set point than it would for the ACT. So the ACT's English benchmark is 18. And the message here that you see popping up at the top, the explanation of it is that if you hit 18, then you've got a 50% chance of getting a B or higher in the corresponding college English course, so your freshman English class. Math would be your freshman class, reading would be a social studies class, and science would be something like biology. So the freshman class is the 101s for the college version of those classes. So 18 gives you a 50% chance of getting at least a B. So you can imagine if you score higher than 18, then you've got a higher than 50% chance of getting at least a B in those courses based on this metric. Okay. All right, so, and then you'll see the same thing for math. It pops up to 22. Reading is also 22, and then science will be 23. Okay, does anyone have any questions about ACT? I will also follow up by saying that if you compare these averages, and in the rollover on this one, you'll see also number of records. In this case, 131 at Apex High for the Asian subgroup. Here, students will bubble in their ethnicity for the test, but when the scores come back and they're posted from SIS knows what race they registered under, and so we think that these scores are possibly adjusted for that. So if you take out your paper copy of your ACT report for your school, and you compare it to these bars, you might have some difference in these averages and in counts. Okay, are there any questions about ACT or pre-ACT before we go on? Okay. All right, I think I'm going to be able to now pass this off, let's see, to Anne, who's going to talk about, I think, EOCs. Let me stop presenting there. Okay, Anne.
Okay. Let me share my screen. All right, can you see it?
Yep.
All right, so I am going to show the EOC dashboard, which has 3 different sheets for each of the subject, biology, English 2, and math 1. We will have a math 3 sometimes soon. We just talked to the folks in SIS and made them aware that there was another dashboard, another EOC that they could make a dashboard for. Now, the way they're built is really exactly the same. So if we pick one of them, you can apply whatever to all of the dashboard. So there's 3 sheets and then a data sheet in each of those dashboards. If I click on the first one, it is static. There's no filtering or anything. And it has the Wake County percentages on the top. It's percent by level, and all the area at the bottom. Also static, so that you have, you can, if you want to compare your school to the district or to your area, you can use that page. You probably would have to save it to use it when you go to the next one, where it's going to be by school. And just one little note is, for math, last year we started with a new way to determine, excuse me, what the levels are. So there's not going to be level 1 and 2, but there's going to be a non-proficient that combines the level 1 and 2 for 18-19. The second one is very similar to what Kevin just presented. It's by school. Oh, and actually the Wake County is on the top, so you can compare yourself to Wake County. And you could filter by area if you wanted to see only the schools that are in your area, for instance, by year, which if you don't do anything, you see all of 3 years, by test, and oh, there's no filter by school. Oh, school name, never mind. By school. So if we wanted to get heritage, now we can compare that school for biology to the district. And the overall is showing, but we could also pick different ethnicity, which I guess is kind of a little bit confusing, because you can pick ethnicity, but you can't show it. You can just show one of them. Or if you were to pick 2 at the same time, it'll only show you 1 bar. So it's really the combination of those 2. It's all of the kids who are in Asian and white, for instance. That's what I picked here. But if we continue to go through those pages, it'll go more and more in details as we go. So I could just pick one. And that gives me only the Black or African American kids at that school. And then if I continue, it'll be even more details. But instead of being the percentages, we now have numbers. So it is the number of students with a specific level. So I'm going to pick the same school again. Filter for heritage. And now you have the way it's organized, you have the school, and then each year. So if you scroll down, it makes you go through all 3 years, and then each of the grade, and then ethnicity. And the question that Cindy had earlier about gender, I am pretty sure that all the dashboards right now, as far as subgroup, are only showing ethnicity. I don't think there's any other subgroup anywhere. So that's one thing to keep in mind, and maybe it'll be expanded as we create more, and I mean, they create more and more of those dashboards. So here it'll show you the number of students in each of the category, by grade, by subgroup, by level. And that is pretty much all we have in those dashboard for EOCs. Are there any questions?
And Sylvie, can you speak to, if I wanted to see 2 races side-by-side comparisons, can I print them out?
Yeah, you'd have to export, right? Like in the last one there was a, no, not this one. Because this one shows you all of the numbers for each. But if you were in the percentages, and I would have to pick one school. Oops. I can't aim correctly. There we go. And then I am filtering for one of the ethnicity. So that's why I said earlier, if I click 2 here, it's going to show only 1 bar, which is a combination of those 2 subgroups. But if you wanted to see it side by side, you'd have to do that, and then you can download in PDF or in a PowerPoint or image, and then you go back and pick your other ethnicity, and then you can compare them.
Thanks again, Sylvie.
Sure.
So downloading that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have a quick question. I'm not sure if this is the right place to ask or not, but I'm looking at like our school growth data right now. So is now a good time to ask those EVAAS kind of questions or no?
Sonia, you're muted.
I was saying that was actually a perfect segue. If no one else has any questions about the EOC dashboards that Anne-Sophie just shared. I was just gonna,
right?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
You're going to do EVAAS.
Yeah, I'm gonna go into EVAAS next. I was just gonna add that when Anne-Sophie was showing how to download and print, that PowerPoint slide is actually pretty good if you guys decided that you wanted to take a screenshot of some data or an actual PowerPoint of the data to include in a presentation. It actually comes out pretty good, so that you can use that. So, Anne-Sophie, can you release your screen?
Yep.
And I will share my screen if I can. I always have trouble, so bear with me. Present now your entire screen. I have to say it out loud. Dashboard. And tell me, did it work?
Yes, ma'am.
It did?
Yep, we can see what you're saying.
Okay. So, perfect. I deserve a hand clap because last time it took me 5 minutes. Bonnie, do you want to go ahead and answer your question now, or do you want me to talk about this EVAAS dashboard
Let me hear what you got first, and then because you may answer my question. I'm not sure.
Okay. So this particular dashboard from EVAAS is really just a graphic presentation of the school accountability overall, the school's overall growth that's a part of the accountability model. And so if you recall, the school accountability information that's in EVAAS is looking at how well your school made progress with students. And so the meets expected growth range, which is the center column here, the ranges for the indexes between -2 and +2. So that would be your green area.
Sonia, we are not seeing your dashboard. We're just seeing your Wake ID right now if you are looking at one. Sorry to cut you off.
I thought you could see it. Okay,
Sorry.
what about now? What do you see now?
You're
Yes.
so close, Sonia.
I know. Okay, let me start over. Well, I don't have to start all the way over, but the center section or column that I was mentioning, that's the green area that you would see in your dashboard or in your EVAAS report. So if your index score was between -2 and +2, then that would be the green indication that you met expected growth overall as a school. Anything that's greater than +2 would be your blue area, meaning that your school exceeded growth. And then anything less than -2 would be, does not meet growth and would be considered in the red. Remember that the state's definition of meeting growth is that we want our students to do at least as well in the current year as they did in the previous year. So no matter the statistic that you're looking at, whether it's percentiles or NCE scores, when you're looking at the difference between those two scores, if you are right around 0, then you're going to be within that meets expected growth area. But you do have a range, -2 to +2 for that complete range. But when you're thinking and you're looking at your overall school's growth, the closer you are to 0 or better is a strong indication that the students in your school did what was expected of them. In other words, they kept up with their peers who were tested in this, in the same year with the same test. And in this case for high school, if we're talking about high school, we are talking about the EOC courses. So this dashboard operates the same way as the other dashboards. You can filter by school. So I'll go over here and pull up Heritage. And you can select as many schools as you want, depending on what the comparison is. And you can see this is from the 18-19 school year. And it does provide you with some subgroups here that you can also look to see how your students did.
So can I ask my question right here then? Because this is what I'm looking at right now. So I'm looking at the overall picture, right? And I see that my white students went backwards and so did my AIG students, right? I know I have lots of overlap between my white kids and my AIG kids. I'm trying to figure out what happened, like what went left. So, as an invite, where did it go left so we can better support those teachers? That's my question. So I got that picture, but I don't really know how to dig any deeper to figure out what happened and where it happened.
Yes, that's
so we can work on fixing it.
Yes, that's a very good question, and that was the first thing that came to my mind when I saw both of those bars. So what I would recommend is that you need to go into EVAAS to dig deeper, because in EVAAS you would be able to look either by teacher. And the one graph that's in EVAAS, the diagnostic report that provides you with the grouping of students. So students that are in your low area, low to mid.
Yeah.
So you can look at that and at least see what groups of students are your teachers most effective with for each of the tests. Because it could be, because it could be that your teachers are focusing more on one particular group or another. Over another. And you can even look by AIG students, and then you can drill all the way down to the specific students. So you can look to see, even though those students may not be in that EOC course any longer, but they're going to be students that are very similar to those students. And so you can have teachers reflect on what went well with those students and what is it that they did not do as well as they had hoped in terms of helping students to meet growth. A lot of times teachers will say, well, and your teachers might say this, well, the majority of our students are high performance students, they are our white kids, and they are probably AIG, and it's harder to make growth with our AIG students. And so what I would suggest is that you refer them back to the state's definition of growth, which is we want kids to do at least as well in the current year as they did in the previous year. So in other words, regardless of how the kids score or how the kids came to you rather, what you want is for them to at least do as well as they did in the previous year. So keep them where they are. So if they are already high, then keep them high. And they have met the growth expectation. And so what's happening, I assume, without digging any deeper into your data, is that kids are coming and they're not being challenged, and so they're slipping a bit. And so you would want to look to see who those kids are and to look at teachers and see how effective the teachers are with those students.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And so just as we just finished talking about, that's what you would use this particular dashboard for. And in your case, or any school, you might want to compare schools that you feel are very similar to yours in terms of demographics. Who do you guys compare yourselves to?
That's the same thing I was thinking too, is like we're similar to Wake Forest, but that was my next step. Actually, I was thinking, let me look at other schools' data. I didn't know how to do that until just now today, so thank you. To see like how they're doing, and then I can reach out to their people and say, oh, what are you all doing? Because you're maybe hitting what we're not hitting.
Right, and that's exactly what you want to do. And also, if you go into EVAAS, there is a scatter plot graph that will plot all of the schools, all of the high schools in the district. And so you can, depending on what it is that you're looking at, if it's growth versus achievement, then you can use that scatter plot to find schools that are very similar to yours in terms of their growth and achievement.
Exactly. Okay, great. I am so excited. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions about the EVAAS dashboard? If there are not any other questions, since we can't go into Oasis, I can pull up that scatter plot graph if you want in EVAAS.
Well, can you?
Yeah. Let me see how quickly, since you already have my screen. Let me see.
So just a reminder when you're finished to turn over to Spencer, because he still has the performance tasks.
Oh, that's right. So maybe let's let Spencer do the performance task, and then if we have time at the end, I'll go into EVAAS.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you. So I'll do a quick refresher just on what the performance task is, since it's geared towards elementary and middle school students. And then I'll show you the dashboards for that and how that might be useful. So performance tasks, we want to be able to gauge what our students know and can be able to do. And a lot of the assessments that we look at are really hitting those knowledge targets. But when we think about what skills we want them to have, that communication and critical thinking is probably high up on the list, but we didn't have great data sources for that. So we developed this performance task annually for 4th and 7th graders, and I'll share this on the website in case you want to learn more in the chat, in order to kind of measure that. So the idea is that each 4th and 7th grade students are kind of presented with a novel problem, read sources, sometimes contradictory on that problem, and then they're supposed to come up with some kind of solution, some kind of pitch. And that way it's getting into their ability to think critically, looking at different sources, and to then communicate their ideas clearly to an authentic audience. The rubric for it, so they write that up, and then we partner with the company Measurement Incorporated so that we can get kind of valid and reliable results there. And what we're looking at is communication kind of on a micro level sentence by sentence how they're communicating their ideas. And that's scored 1 through 4. Communication on more of a macro level, how are their ideas flowing section to section. And then critical thinking, which is actually out of 3 points. And I'll share this rubric in the chat as well, in case that is helpful. So when you get that, we end up with the data, and I'll use Heritage Middle since sport comes right there, to see how our kids are doing with those communication critical thinking skills. At this point, we've looked at a number of dashboards, so you get the general idea, but we can this gives us this quick kind of mile-high overview of how kids are doing. So for instance, Heritage Middle, you can kind of see, well, there's actually a pretty big jump in how their kids are doing in that kind of 2.5, 3 and on, where they're really improving there. And this, I'll say this dashboard actually does have gender. So same thing where you can kind of jump around and look at, okay, how about for our male students? And we can see, how they're doing that 1.5, whereas we might, when we jump over to the female students, see that we're actually doing a little bit better with a smaller percentage of them kind of struggling there. So it gives you an idea of some places to start to kind of have the conversations. You can see a very similar thing when you jump over to like writing mechanics or critical thinking. Just remember that critical thinking is actually only out of 1 through 3 for this one. But yeah, that's the performance task. It's really meant to kind of get a sense of how are kids doing with these 4C skills, specifically critical thinking and communication, and what can we do with that information. So for instance, at the high school level, Bonnie, maybe looking through and going through SOAR to get a sense of how are kids doing that area, that might highlight some kids that maybe their grades aren't great, but they can think critically and they can talk, or they can communicate those ideas. And that might give you a kind of some inroads for how to reach them and how to connect with them, give them ways to show what they know. So that's the idea behind the performance task. Any questions about that assessment or that dashboard?
So for this, I can see at the school level only, correct?
For this, yes. Now,
Okay.
we're not showing off now, but SOAR, so what you would be able to do with the SOAR database is have one of the categories. So if you look at just say your incoming 9th graders, you could then say, okay, let me see their critical thinking skills. And maybe that gives you some ideas for how you can connect with some kids.
Yeah, you're right. I have seen that because we're trying to figure out once we have a governor issued decision, how we're going to like connect with our rising 9th graders. And we're at a loss right now. So I can maybe look at that while we're waiting. So we kind of at least have some big picture idea of what the kids can do. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, of course, you're welcome.
And Spencer, I think I got an email from Karthik. He did change the critical thinking dashboard. So if you refresh, it should show.
Oh, it's quick.
Yeah.
Guy's a pro.
So I'm going to
Yes.
try again to present my screen. And I have EVAAS pulled up. Are you guys seeing EVAAS on my screen? Really? First time. All right. Okay, so the report that I was referencing in EVAAS is the scatter plot report. So you just go to reports, and then it's over here under scatter plot, under comparison reports, you see scatter plot is there. You have to type in your UID number. And so we are going to just look at reading. Or I'm sorry, I wanted to look at a high school. So let me go back. Any particular subject you're curious about, Bonnie?
English too.
Okay. And we're just going to do the 3-year average. So you can see here, you start out with a blank palette, and it gives you the options to look at growth versus achievement. But if you look at the drop down, you can see that there are other options that you are able to take a look at. But let's just leave it on the default growth versus achievement, just so you can get the gist of what we're doing. And I'm going to go first and find Heritage. to get them on the screen. So we're going to go ahead and add heritage. And you can, I'm going to just change their, if I can remember on this graph, I'm going to change the color points really quickly. Okay, so now we see where heritage is. This provides you with where your growth index was and what your entry and achievement level is. What we want to do is compare you guys to the rest of the schools, high schools in the district. So, which are all of these. I'm just going to go and add everyone else. And so here are the rest of the schools. And if you hover over the schools, you can see what schools who are scoring somewhere near where you are or better. And so here we have Holly Springs, Leesville Road, the Women's Leadership Academy, Panther Creek is over here, STEM Early College. So you can get an idea about what schools are doing well with their students in terms of growth and achievement. So when you are talking with your teachers and they tell you that our students are high performing and it's hard to figure out how to help them grow, this is where you would want to find some comparison schools who are doing just that. You know, Panther Creek, for example, is a school, or Enloe. Again, Leesville Road. So, and you can change what it is that you're looking at, again, by going here and selecting any one of these particular areas, or you could customize it based on particular things that you want to look at. So you can select any one of these things if you wanted to look by a particular race, and then do that in comparison to either the various levels or other races. So that's just a nice, quick way for you to figure out what schools are similar to yours, because it may be different than what you initially thought.
Great. Good. Thank you. I'm excited again.
Are there any other EVAAS questions that you have, or just questions in general?
No, that was my big question coming in today, so thanks.
Okay, good. So I'm going to stop presenting, and Melissa?
So I guess we can wrap up. Are there any overall questions for our participants? And while you're thinking of questions, I'll show you our website that you can go to. So again, thank you guys for coming. If someone can put the website in the chat for me, I'd appreciate it. And as we are done, you can find the recording will be here. And as we add more office hour topics, feel free to come back to this website. And once you see a question, if there's a question that you have ahead of time, please feel free to use, go to here and submit your questions so we can follow up. And then we have some contacts for if you have any other questions, either about today or any of the previous topics.
Can I just ask?
Go ahead.
If I have a question, what's the best way? I mean, I can go and look at the dashboards and see if I can find it myself. But if I have a question about something, what's the best way? How would I get that question? Like, is there a place to put in a question just generally when I'm trying to get data, or should I contact one of you all, or what?
So let me start this way, Cindy. If you see at the bottom here, depending on the dashboard that you've seen discussed, here are the contacts for the different dashboards that were discussed.
Right.
But if you have another question unrelated to like what is seen here, then feel free to submit your question. Or, I
Okay.
mean, like, you know us, Cindy, so just email us.
I know. Well, I often bug Robin and say, how do I get this done? But I just didn't know if there was a formal channel that I needed to be going through.
Sure,
Well,
we
if
have
you-
formal channels, but informal still works. Go ahead, Sonia.
Great.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, if you have and you a data request, like you already know that there's some data that you need for a grant or something along those lines, then you could just go to our Wake Connect page. And Melissa, I don't know if you have your Wake ID open, but you can go to our Wake Connect page, and there is a link there that's a request for data form that you would just fill out. And we'd like for that form to be completed because it asks you questions that are very important, like when do you need the data by, what specific subgroups are you looking for, what is the actual data request in itself. And then, of course, we can always talk. And sometimes what will happen is if you email any of us, we'll talk about what the request is, and then either we'll fill the form out while we're on the phone with you, or we will just ask you to fill the request out if it's depending on how detailed it is. And that's the same, Bonnie, I think you've done a couple of data requests in the past, or a few data requests in the past.
Yeah.
You know, and so we'll try to get it to you when we can. Otherwise, you can just send me an email and we'll take care of the rest. Oh, thank you, Ann Sylvie. She put the link to the form in the
Thank
chat
you.
too.
That's
And you're seeing my page with our Wake Connect page with where you'd find it, right?
Yes, so that first link under quick links is request for data.
good. Thank you.
So if there are no other questions, we can go ahead and end the session. We certainly appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to the dashboards and our explanation of those. And our SIS department is working really hard to create additional dashboards. So as new ones come up, we'll have additional office hours around those. And then we're also planning on having dashboards around any topics, or office hours around any topics. So for example, Bonnie, if you have a PLT who is, going through some data and they have questions, then we are prepared to schedule a time during their PLT time to just hop on a call and answer those questions and just give them a chance to pick our brains or to help them through whatever analysis it is that they're working on. So that's something new that we are doing beginning in the fall. And so, or either the summer if you have teachers who are working. We just want to make ourselves available to as many school personnel as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you.